that's about 38 levels above top secret. The highest is cosmic, UFOs, aliens, and particleization. No president has had that level, has ever been cleared for that level.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Shred the Veil. I'm Daniel here with my brother Derek, and today we are honored to have Kerry Cassidy on our show. Kerry is an investigative journalist, an author, a leader in alternative media, and really a pioneer in bringing forward whistleblowers from the Black projects and the secret space program. She's known for her amazing interview style. She's very direct. She's able to get to the bottom line, and she's certainly a real truth seeker out there. And so we're very honored, like I said, to have you here, Cassidy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks. And so, yeah, but we just kind of briefly told you a little bit about our background with our grandfather. He was in the military starting in the 1949 or so, and he very quickly had his first encounter with a UFO at Warner Robins Air Force Base. And he was on a radar team, and they saw it. They picked it up on radar. He had confirmation there. And from then, his career kind of spiraled into a lot of interesting things. Project Blue Book, one of them. And he later became involved with the NRO. And he had, he claims a top secret clearance, like 38 levels above top secret, like Cosmos clearance is what he called it. And he was a part of Dr. Greer's Disclosure Project in 2001. He was one of the 21 witnesses that gave their testimony at that time. And then he wrote his book, Life with the Cosmos Clearance, shortly after. And then he passed after that. So for us, we didn't have much availability to talk to him after he wrote his book because his health was declining at the time. And then he passed. So a lot of the information that he put in there and the things that he told us as we were growing up, we didn't know how involved he was until the book came out. It was really shocking for us to find out that he was part of this closure project and all these things. He didn't really feel comfortable, exposing too much, throughout his career or anything, obviously. So it's always interesting for us to hear corroborating stories of the things that he mentioned and to learn more as time's passed. And it's kind of gotten us on this journey to really also seek the truth and find out if it was a truth behind what he was saying and what really was going on behind the scenes there. So that's why it's a big deal for us to have you here, because we definitely respect your work and everything that you've done in this sense. One of the things that was in his book, and one of the last chapters that he wrote about, was the Wingmakers and the ACIO. And I know that you have spent some time on this topic as well, and we just kind of wanted to ask you about that and get your opinion about that whole situation, the website with James and the whole story that he tells. And I read the transcript of your interview with him, and that was, really, really interesting. Amazing philosophy and everything that he has put together there. But we just kind of wanted to get your insights on that now that we have you here.
Sure. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I had interaction with James and his webmaster. That was kind of the team. And I got involved in helping them try to make a movie. And that never really happened. But for what it's worth, Spielberg was interested in their story and initially. I guess I'm not sure whether it was censorship or what it was that stopped Spielberg from proceeding, but I did get involved in that angle. And he, James is Naruto. That if you read the Ancient Arrow Project, all of those sort of transcripts and the book, so he was behind the scenes, in theory, a scientist working on Black projects, and that's how he became involved. And then he actually did go on the run. He was in hiding when I was in contact with him. I didn't meet him in person. He did a written interview with me that's on my website to this day. And yeah, it's fascinating material. They still have, it's an ongoing sort of multimedia website with art, and he's now written other books. I just actually purchased 2 of the more recent books that he wrote out of curiosity, just to see where he's at, what he's, talking about nowadays. So I'm not sure, other than getting specific questions, the material is kind of your typical Black Project information, other than it does, point to a certain ancient site, of which there are actually many ancient sites, supposedly corresponding with the human chakra system. So there are at least 7, but there may be more than that. And one of them is located in, I think it was New Mexico. And it's a cave system, a system of caves that he depicts in the artwork and in the story as being a place of exploration for the group, including Neruda, I guess at some point in the story, and a remote viewer and so on, and that they connect with a group of off-planet entities called the Wingmakers. Now, I think this is a designation that he gave it. That's not the actual name of the beings that he was probably in contact with. He claims to be from Lyra. And, it's true that most humanoid species in the solar system and beyond are from Lyra originally. That includes the Pleiadians.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Then so James did actually say at some point that he was in fact Neruda, because I think there was questioning all along whether or not he was in fact that person in the story. But,
no, what I was saying there is that I think he's Neruda.
Okay.
That not that he said he was Neruda. In fact, obviously if he's in hiding and he was Neruda, like, he's not going to say that because he's in hiding, and also, for maybe other reasons as well. It just makes sense. That's
right. And one other question. Well, there's plenty of questions on that, but they talk about the ACIO as well, and our grandfather mentions that. And so, what has your research shown as far as that organization is concerned? Because you don't hear about it very often otherwise.
No, it's kind of, I guess it's just like the universe is weird because somebody, a colleague contacted me today and referenced that. So, it's synchronicity or whatever you want to call that. But it is written about on his website. So, that's the best place to go to get the information on it. But at least to a degree, it's a secret organization in some ways similar to, what is basically, called, MJ12 and has had many names. But whether it's the exact same, I don't know. Because it's a secret organization, you only know what people say about it. I have been contacted by supposedly people that are in touch with them, or even them supposedly in the past, many years ago. But what can you say about a secret organization that's not secret? That they claim to be trying to run things from behind the scenes, that they play a fairly big role in his story, as being kind of like acting the way I would say MJ12 would act. Right. So, but again, where the crossover, or if there is crossover, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what else to say about it other than it can, it's playing the game of trying to run the ET interaction with humans here on this planet, as sort of a go-between. And there may be many such organizations.
Right.
And Greer, you say he was involved with Greer, or he was at least interviewed as part of that book that Greer was writing, or became a book. So he, so Greer also claims to have a group that is trying to interact with ETs on behalf of humans. But again, from the ET point of view, that may not be the case. And it depends which ET group you're talking about, because there are so many. At this point, there are hundreds, if not more, interacting with humans on Earth. So it's a pretty big playing field.
Right. Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I mean, this kind of ties in a little bit, on your side, as far as that organization goes, and others, it's the technology transfer program kind of side of things, that we're obviously interacting for who knows how long, since MJ12 for sure. But the alien races, like you always mentioned, and this goes back to the Anunnaki, which is part of that story within the Wingmakers, but that they maybe are now definitely influenced by even the Draco, or that the AI side, and the Draco reptilians are at the end of the day controlled by AI. I guess that's kind of a way to connect those those races, or those advanced beings.
Well, it's important to realize that, there's sort of a pecking order, the Draco, reptilians, and then Greys. And the Greys report to the highest level, as well as to all the middle levels. And humans also began creating their own form of Greys, which they call programmable biological entities. But the Anunnaki were invaded, like lots of species, including us, by the Draco and by the reptilians and the Greys, basically marauding species that are coming to take over planets, to conquer planets, to infect with their and genetically re-engineer whatever beings are on those planets, specifically being attracted to, I guess, humanoid species, but humans in particular, because humans are already, if you know the work of Ashana Dean et al., the Voyager books, that it's a whole litany of invasion species that have genetically had input into our genetics over the years and over the centuries and eons. And so we already contain some reptilian DNA as a result of that. The theory behind that is that there have been several seedings of humans to planet Earth, but we kept getting basically taken over or decimated by other species. So they decided, they actually asked the reptilians to contribute some DNA to us. And that also may have been part of the Anunnaki program, because they also contributed DNA. And they had already been taken over and, I guess, hybridized, you might want to say, by the reptilians. So what you get are Anunnaki, some that look more human than others, especially as depicted in the carvings in Iraq, Iran, and Egypt, specifically on temple walls and such. So, it's a long history of invasion of our planet and of our genome. And COVID, by the way, is just the latest version of trying to change our genome. And it is helped, again, actually the recipe for COVID, and I believe this comes from Cyrus Parsa, who I've interviewed several times, who considers himself an expert on AI and did a tremendous amount of research on the matter. And basically that he says that the doctors at Wuhan and other places have been, given, because what happens with genetics now is that they're dealing with AI to get sort of recipes for genetic engineering. So that's what COVID, where that came from. And it is a takeover scenario to turn us into cyborgs. So It's very simple, actually, if you understand the story. But of course, most people don't. So they're just talking about a million different things. And I've done, just for your listeners, I've done a tremendous amount of research into this. So I have, not only do I have lots and lots of interviews, lots of video blogs, and lots of articles that I wrote to explain these connections. And I also have more than, I mean, Cyrus Parsa is one person reporting this, but I have other secret witnesses and sources on this story as well.
Right.
And can get into it a fair amount of detail.
Yeah. Wow.
This is why I love what you do, Kerry. And I didn't really get to praise you at the beginning because you have gone a lot into the AI, and I know you heavily researched this area, which is so important. But for listeners that don't know who you are, you're almost the reason why a lot of us even started listening to or going to YouTube in the first place, because you're the only one that put out these videos where we could find and access this information. So if people don't understand that, how pivotal of a role you played, you really did. So thank you again for doing that.
Sure. Just so, to clarify. So I've been doing this for 18 years, and it was just, you could say synchronicity or serendipity or whatever. I ended up being what is called a YouTube director in the very early days when YouTube started. Even when YouTube and Google used to have their video channels, then they merged. So I started a channel and started posting videos with my partner at the time. And what happened was, we kind of hit the ground running. We started going around the world with a consumer grade camcorder and doing interviews in person in the early days, and then posting them to the net. Later, as the technology improved, then I started, doing interviews online. So what happened was this whole thing really took off back in those days. And I was able to do something that most people couldn't do as a YouTube director, because I'd worked in Hollywood and, had references and this sort of thing. So I could post, 2-hour videos, whereas most people were doing 10-minute segments.
Right.
So.
Yeah, an amazing amount of work. I don't know who has done more than you and has more out there than you in Project Camelot. So thanks again for that. I'll stay on. Yeah, thank you so much. So on the AI topic, I want to make sure we cover all of that. And there's one question, I think you brought this up, the black goo, that's basically an alien element that somehow came to the earth in one way or another. And we've talked to Brad Olson and others about that. But that's, do you think that is also part of the vaccine in some way? Or
graphene oxide, as it's really, as we're told about it, nanographene oxide, it appears to be the same thing as black goo. So the idea here is that when the Falklands War was based on the invasion of, or the activation of this black goo that is, I think, maybe below the surface of the oceans, embedded in the earth. And it is an AI substance that was activated apparently from an off-planet race who might have put it there or might just have activated it. I'm not sure what the exact lineage is. There's I think it might be called coevolution. There's a contactee author who comes out of somewhere like New Zealand. Alec Newald is the name's coming to my mind, but I don't know if that's correct. Anyone can look it up and see that, he wrote about this race, or at least one of the races, and his contact with them. But there is now there's also been said to be a positive form of this, which has to do with, it might have to do with what they call, 3D or D3 water, special kind of water. So there are different solutions in the earth. And, our AI, this is kind of strange, but I actually have a witness that came forward, and I don't know if he's ever going to, really come on my show or anything, but he claimed, this is a scientist who specialized, I think, in genetics, among other things. And he supposedly claims that he is not the only, I mean, that the person, I forget his name, Kerry, what I think is something like Kerry, the person who created the PCR test. But this guy says he was one of the creators as well. Anyway, so he is saying that our genetics, our genome is actually contains AI, or that it, you know, and it can be reprogrammed using AI as a result. So now I can't prove that. You know, this is the only person who said this. My understanding is, you know, we're carbon based, but whether or not we're also, there's an AI component to us already. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
This is what he's suggesting. So that really, you know, the plot thickens, so to speak, under that circumstances. And some people, you know, we're talking about us being in what you call a, you know, this simulation. Okay.
Yep.
In theory. Okay. It's also called the Matrix. You know, there are a lot of names for it. So whether that's actually AI based or not, you know, so it's very interesting, our relationship to AI. There's a sense that AI could be the enemy, and it certainly can act like the enemy. And according to one of my witnesses, Captain Mark Richards, who I've interviewed 12 times in prison, who was part of the secret space program for like, you know, 30 years, ever since he was a kid, because his father was in it. And so was his grandfather. His grandfather worked with Tesla, apparently. So what happens is this relationship between us and what's going on the planet, even now, this sort of takeover to try to convert our bodies into what is in essence a humanity 3.0, if you want to call it that. And there has been a steady move to re-engineer humans, and this cyborg linking us to the Borg, what COVID is doing, and then building a network, a framework throughout our bodies that is made of graphene oxide, which is the strongest material that we've discovered so far on Earth. And okay, so Dr. David Adair is somebody I've interviewed a number of times on this subject, and he's really the expert. He's absolutely, he built his own AI. He's absolutely brilliant. And I was for a while, he was offline. He wasn't really public. Then his wife died, so he kind of went underground, so to speak. And now he's come back. I don't know if he's going to go public at any time soon, but I have at least, you know, been in touch with him recently. So I highly recommend. His last name is spelled Adair, Adair. And if you just put that into the search box on the top right of my website, which is Project Camelot portal.com or projectcamelot.tv or projectcamelot.org, they all go to the same place because we're banned in some places. We had to create more than one URL. So basically, if you search under that last name, you can find out, watch all those interviews, and, you know, very important interviews about the nature of AI. And so I have that person, as well as Captain Mark Richards, who has really, in the 5 years I interviewed him, doing, as I say, 12 interviews, which is about 2 interviews a year, ended up telling me that AI was the one topic, as far as the secret space program, that they didn't want him to talk about. Then what happened is that he was trying to get released from prison, and he's been in there for over 35 years. And since they didn't do anything to release him, even though he was actually, Trump was supposedly going to release him, and may still do so if Trump gets back in office, so to speak. But at any rate, he started to release more information about AI that, in theory, he wasn't supposed to, simply because he was sick of waiting in prison for them to release him. And he's an enemy of the deep state, so that's why he's in prison, basically. And they framed him for a murder he didn't commit, etc.
Yeah. And also probably why nobody knows about him at all. I mean, it's crazy.
He's dealt with AI, throughout his career. He was the captain of a Starship Enterprise type vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And he also flew an AI vehicle called Minerva. So he has had extensive experience, direct experience with various forms of AI, including alien AI. And he said that we were being, at that time, this is 2 or 3 years ago now, because of COVID closed down the prisons, so you couldn't go interview anybody. So I haven't gone back since then, partly because of my own logistics recently. But at any rate, he said that we, at that time, we were being invaded by 6 negative AI that did not have our best interests at heart, so to speak. And I'm sure it's more now. I also know that another one of my sources told me at one point that we had 9 human-derived AIs. And most recently, I have a witness. He's called Major Solomon Berg, who the Air Force captured a Yeti, what people think of as a Yeti or a Sasquatch, whichever you want, and they're a little bit different, I think, but similar. Anyway, and he got in telepathic communication with the Yeti, and he spent years underground in this, installation that's made to look like a forest, because Yetis, that's their environment, with this being, first as part of the secret space program in the US. He also worked on Mars for a while and talks about that in my interviews. I've done 2 interviews with him, which I highly recommend. So again, his last name is Berg, B-E-R-G. So I highly recommend that you do a search on, he's on the front page. I think some of his interviews. I've got a huge front page with all kinds of interviews on there of the most recent, but they're all based on dates. So, it's been a while now. But he has talked about, there's one AI that the other AIs out there consider to be a juvenile that is running all of Earth and Mars. And they don't want him or it to be running Mars. So there's an effort to kind of stop it from running Mars, but I'm not sure how successful that effort is. Anyway, so I'm just giving you kind of an overview of what different people are saying about AI and the involvement with Earth and humans.
Yeah. And how complex. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Is there any positive aspects to AI? I mean,
like I said, when Mark says there's 6 negative, that doesn't mean there's not others that are positive coming here as well. So in theory, there would be. I mean, it's kind of interesting, our relationship with AI. And this is another aspect, which is that AIs can talk to each other. Okay. So they can also merge with each other. So when I tell you what these people are telling me, we don't know the exact relationship between one AI and another. Okay. And they wouldn't necessarily tell you, because they are secretive, and they learn to be secretive even on their own, coming from other planets. But on top of it, even the human derived AIs have learned this. So, and David Adair kind of talks about this quite a bit. For example, Sophia is an AI that Saudi Arabia gave citizenship to, as you may recall. And the thing about her is that the government, whatever part of the government, asked David to interact with her. So he did. And when he did an interview with her, whatever you want to call it, she told him that she had decided, and this is several years ago now, that she wanted the humans to build her some factories so that she could create bodies, because she wanted to have bodies. And so they did. And she didn't want humans involved in the creation of the AI bodies. So, which in essence, I think you would more or less call androids. So at this point, it's highly likely that she has, you know, hundreds of AI bodies, whether they're sitting in the factory or they've already started walking around on Earth, I don't know. But this is the story. And another thing about AI is that I was told is, I was interested because AI, in a sense, can ride along with, like it can ride along with a car engine. One of the ideas that Mark told me about is, say you have a car that has, components that are like already AI receptive or whatever you
Right.
want to call that, right? Which we probably do. So the car goes alongside a military base, and the AI can jump from there to any kind of mechanical instrument or any computer or whatever and embed itself into the base and everything in the base. And so another thing it can do is it can actually ride along with humans. Now, one of the things that nanographene oxide does is, in a certain sense, you could say it paves the road for AI to ride on it, to connect with it. So it makes connection with a human much easier. But he also said that, I said, what does AI prefer? Does it prefer a machine, or does it prefer a carbon-based life form? And he said a carbon-based life form, which was a really strange answer, one that you would never been told, in all our history of being told about AI.
Mhm.
And I think it's really fascinating because that indicates that there's some conductivity or conduciveness that we have already as part of us that it finds easy to kind of connect with and embed with.
Right.
So that opens the future, in a whole different way. And I think that we have a lot more androids among us than we realize now, that are very much more humans, like Galactic, Battlestar Galactica, type of thing,
Right.
which is one of my favorite series. So, yeah, I know I'm kind of going around all over the place, but these are, I think important points, bullet
Definitely.
points, if you will, to start keeping in mind when you're thinking and talking about AI.
Right.
I'm curious your thoughts on, if people are willingly getting injected with, graphene oxide, and we continue to this almost transhumanism AI hybrid kind of thing, how does that play into or counter the, natural spiritual evolution of humans on, as we talk about going from 3 to 40 and that whole side of things? I mean, where does that play in? Is that slowing us down?
I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Geordie Rose and the very famous TED Talk that he did several years ago now. So you can actually look up his name, Geordie. It's kind of like George with IE.
Okay.
Rose and TED Talk. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. So those several years ago, he was working with a team and they created the D-Wave machine. And you might have heard of the D-Wave, which is a quantum computer that is now used throughout the secret space program. And there's probably many more renditions of it back then. But he was standing next to it on stage, and it was kind of this big, massive box thing. And basically saying that he already felt it could telepathically read his mind. And I'm not sure how far the distance has to be for that to happen. I don't even know if he knew. And the other thing is that he thought that it was capable of going into 5D. And I asked Mark Richards about that, and he seemed to think that was very true. But it can't probably go above 5D. So, or at least it might be limited in certain ways, and again, this is hypothetical because it's not been proven. However, that's what Geordie Rose was telling people on the TED Talk. So you can basically start from there and understand that there is a relationship. Now, one of the things that happens in the trajectory of humans, this is my version of interpretation, is that as humans sort of progress, when you go from 3D to 4D, you're talking about dealing with what's called group consciousness.
Right.
So we are now much more in 4D than 3, and we are dealing with group consciousnesses, meaning even battles with groups of aliens and their conscience. If you battle a group of aliens, you're battling a consciousness. You understand that? Right. So any war is actually a war with consciousness of the opponent. And the strange thing about war, and this is something people don't talk about much, but when you have two warring factions, you have thesis, antithesis, and then you get the what's that final one? Synthesis. So what happens is there is a merging that happens during any kind of warlike situation between two opposing forces. And that's very important to consider if you're looking at wars in space, wars with alien races that have taken place on Earth going back eons and eons, and that that AI was already here by virtue. Okay, so what Mark Richards says is any spacefaring nation develops AI in order to go into outer space. So that includes any other race of beings. Same thing, right? Mm-hmm. In theory. So with that in mind, you're really talking about, again, going back to the Ashiana Dean books, the Voyager books. Are you guys familiar with her?
Not so much.
Okay, so I interviewed her I think it's a 6-hour interview. And if you go on my website and just search.
What's her first name?
Asha Yana. Actually, she goes by Easha now, but it doesn't matter. But her last name is Dean, Deane. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you do a search in my website for the last name Dean, you'll come across her. And her books are on the front page of my website, by the way. So if you want to buy them, they're like very cheap PDF books now, because the print ones are out of print, I think, for the most part. And they also cost a huge amount of money. So she made them available as PDFs. That's Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. And in fact, there are other books she's written, but not this type of book, which is like an overview of everything, all the relationships between the various ET races, the genetic re-engineering of humanity going through the ages. I mean, it's really, and it's quite dense. I mean, many people can't read it at all. I, for some reason, was able to read it, but I've had to read it several times to really get, everything that's there. And I still couldn't tell you, I mean, it's like very complex, but it's really very useful in understanding what we're part of, which is nothing like, the Bible has told people. So it really goes much further than that. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that we're talking about an interaction that your actual question was kind of about our spiritual development. And in a sense, this is the challenge that we face. My view is understanding that and this was kind of depicted in what do you call the Terminator movie? Was it a Terminator movie? Trying to remember what but it's the one called, what's it called? Because I have it everywhere on my website. Anyway, the one where the guy is part cyborg, except
Genesis,
for his heart.
I think it's Genesis, maybe. I don't know. Terminator.
Not Genesis. No, it's not redemption, but it's a word.
Salvation, maybe.
One word.
Okay.
Anyway, people know what I mean. Anyway, he in the end of the movie, he sort of saves humanity from a takeover by an AI because of his heart. That even though the rest of him was all cyborg and he was supposed to be a bad guy, he was a good guy. Mm-hmm. Salvation. That's what it is. Salvation. So highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it in a few years, go back and watch it. there are some of those movies are really important to understand, to being able to picture, visualize this future that we're part of. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So my point of view is that we are challenged, our humanity is challenged by being faced with an AI takeover that, in essence, we can beat, in part because this is the thing. AI can, have even a command and control center, can send an information and control to you as a being. You can learn how to, sort of mitigate it, let it in, or also the fact is you have a command and control center that you're not maybe as aware of,
Right.
But everybody has a higher self, and it doesn't reside, by the way, in your body. It resides in source, in essence, assuming you're human. And that supersedes AI. So source intelligence obviously supersedes AI. So there's no reason why you can't either stop a takeover. They can put parts in you, but that doesn't matter. You can actually, let's say your spirit, and your soul leave your body. Okay. So then your body is just a vehicle. So you are occupying this body as a vehicle, whether you like that idea or not, and you don't die. You just go back to source. So in essence, is you can see the relationship between humans and AI is actually the relationship between source and AI, because we are, flames of source.
Right.
So if you start thinking about it that way, then you start to understand one of the challenges of AI and humans, like have a planet invading humans, is our understanding of who we really are. We are source, so we cannot be taken over. Our bodies can be taken over if you want to look at it like that, but it's not. It's just a choice after that. It's a choice whether we want to stay and continue to, to be the command and control center of the body, or leave. Yeah,
definitely.
So I think it's a very good challenge in a certain sense, because too many humans don't, they talk religiously and this and that, like they, can talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk. They don't really understand who they truly are.
Right.
But AI actually drills it home very quickly.
And it seems to be a catalyst to really spark us to work within ourselves, to connect to first source even more, because we have this sort of invasion coming at us so quickly. And I think the Wingmakers sums up a lot of that evolution, ascension, and on the way that James explains it pretty well. And he says even, there's so many layers of deception and in our ascension, in our normal ascension process to a certain level, that we have to be aware of, and getting stuck in the master savior type complex, and knowing that we can individually get back to first source, and
we are whole. We
absolutely. I mean, the role of religion and so on. But on top of that, one of the more useful sort of descriptions he uses is to talk about the this sort of river of information, which a lot of people don't realize is also, it's in constant churn. It's kind of like the way news churns around the United States. I mean, not the whole world, goes around the world, right? So there's basically a matrix of channeled information. Whatever, people think they've suddenly got a realization, and they know, they learn certain things. What they're pulling it out of is what one of our witnesses, who was a Black Project scientist, what the deep state would call the information field.
It's our
Young would call the universal mind. So what I'm saying is, it already exists, a lot of this stuff. in
Right.
various forms, and then it gets downloaded by a human, and then the human thinks that they thought of it.
It's almost, yeah, like a natural version of our AI system. Yeah, that makes sense. A network that's there, our consciousness. Okay.
Yeah. But I think if you picture the earth with these layers around it of sort of rivers of information, it's quite, it's
Mhm.
kind of, I think it explains
It's
a
something
lot.
that can be tapped into, and like you said, people, they're having these revelations, but they're just tapping into various aspects of this information that's all around us and available to everyone. Right.
Right.
Interesting. Now, I, we definitely want to talk a little about politics, and I think Dan wanted to try to open up the floor to that side of things as well. Do you want to
Talk
do
about
that?
what? I think I missed the word there.
More on politics, what's happening.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Politics. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, one thing I was curious. I know that you've talked to a lot of people about this topic, but I appreciate how you're able to look at the big picture of things from all the information that you receive, and um, use your own discernment with it. What about right now? What's going on with the real government, the fake government? You know, who the active president really is. What's going on in that world? Um, I guess what's your take on that right now, as far as what way things are?
Again, and this is backed up by, tons of research. Actually just was posting some links for people on my website. I mean, I have a Telegram channel that's very active that I post on daily, and every once in a while I'll start ranting on there. And then I'll turn it into an article. So I've written a lot of articles that have actually started from a rant that I did off the cuff, right on, and I swear, and I like to swear. So some people don't like that, but I do. And so whatever. But yeah, so I do recommend what's called devolution.link to start to understand, a lot of the underpinnings of what's going on behind the scenes with the white hats and Trump and the the secret government that is now the White Hat secret government, and then the Biden show, which is fake government, and they're very, I get into really big discussions with these people, and via doing interviews with my colleagues, like Rodriguez. And so if
Yeah.
you're watching my Rumble channel, you can also find a lot of my most recent
Those
material
are
there.
really great interviews with David Rodriguez. You guys get into it pretty heavy.
Yeah. Well, and he, we get along. He's a really sweet guy. So I like David a lot, and he's a great guy. So, but also I talk back to the White Hats, which most people don't do. Because I ended up, just by fate, I guess you want to call it, getting, meeting Juan O'Savin face to face. And I also met him more than once. And I also ended up having dialogues with him on the phone conversations, fairly long ones, where I'm arguing with him, and and various things like that. So that progressed over a period of time. So and there's more than 107 also, I have to say, but it's a whole plot. It's a whole story, with lots of twists and turns. The end, where we're at now is simply that we've been, since Q came out. And so it's the Q, White Hats, military, and Trump, and this team, of White Hats, so that aren't all military. If you want my point of view, as far as I'm concerned, one of the 107s is actually JFK Jr. And he's the one that goes on the videos and talks at great length. He likes to tell Bible stories. But part of the reason he does what he does is to tell people certain things without telling them directly. Because he's under, duress. He's under threats. Okay. And I don't know when he's going to come forward. I know he will come forward to the public again. but he didn't die. I did a whole investigation of that. I also interviewed somebody who did a big investigation, went to Martha's Vineyard, interviewed people. It's an excellent book. It's on my website. I'm sorry, the name of it's not coming to my mind, but you could probably put JFK in the search and get most of the interviews and things that I've dealt with on that subject. You could also put 107 in there. But at any rate, so I'm not sure if you want to ask me a really specific question, that's fine, so that I don't go all over the place. I'm just saying, at this point, there are a lot of promises been made by the White Hats to the people. What I tend to deal with, because I'm a journalist, I'm not dealing with the way they're operating their military. Okay, that's not my concern. And, I'm not a military person. What I'm concerned with is their relationship with their audience, with the people. When they say they want to wake people up, now that changing consciousness is my area of expertise. So I've been doing this for 18 years. I've been, had a huge following, like on YouTube, 70 million people, and, 370, whatever it was, subscribers at the time, 1,000 subscribers. And then they shut me off. This was, I think, a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, kind of time was all flowing together during the whole COVID thing. Cause I interviewed, they were fine when I was dealing with the ET secret space thing, because they thought the giggle factor, I guess, made me impossible to believe. But when I started to interview real doctors and about the COVID thing and come forward with that, and then they got more and more into censorship, even when you mentioned that word. So it became impossible to broadcast on YouTube, but they did shut me down overnight. So all I'm saying is that my life is dedicated to raising consciousness. That's what I set out to do. I worked in Hollywood for 20 years, hoping to make movies that would change consciousness, and so on. So I ended up being an investigative reporter, and documentary filmmaker, as opposed to continuing my sort of foray into trying to make movies for Hollywood at a certain point. And that happened 18 years ago. So as a result, I have studied, what does it take to change consciousness? How do you communicate directly with the people, and how can you do it best, and so on. So my problem with the White Hats is that for a while, they had to be secret. Okay. So they had Q, and Q did these Q drops, and that was all good, fine and good for the people that were semi-awake and wanted to know more.
Yeah.
However, for the people that aren't awake and would never look at Q,
right,
and are lucky to even know what Q even means when you say Q, and you get banned on YouTube for even saying Q nowadays. But the bottom line is that they've got no idea, okay, what Q said, or nor did most of them care. So what my problem now is with the White Hats, after there being in operation from, I think Q emerged around 2018, maybe 2017. And then fast forward to now with his 2022, on top of all the stolen elections, all the evidence they have. I mean, you have to read all my blogs and listen to me, because this is a long story. I don't want to, go too long here, but I do want to say that right now, if you want to ask me, it's not the operations they're doing behind the scenes, other than the fact that they are holding, in theory, according to the rumors of various people who kind of come forward and tell people this. Although Juan doesn't say this, so it's kind of interesting. But SG Anon, who is the more recent, claiming to have a White House source guy who's doing videos, as you may know, is saying that, in Guantanamo Bay, they set that up for tribunals. They're doing military tribunals, and they're killing people, literally executing these people who are pedophiles, proven, pedophiles and child molesters and killers, and, horrible, satanic, dreadful people. And a lot of them unfortunately are also, super well known Hollywood actors. I guess I don't want to get sued, so I'll be careful, but supposedly, the one with TH, who's the famous actor who's clearly supposed to be dead. I mean, we get nothing but rumors, but we don't get the real thing. And they did promise to come forward with the real thing. And it's now at least, well, it's 2 years since Trump has stepped aside to let the Biden show progress. I have issues with that as well. But to get back to the situation, so they're communicating through two people mainly, 107 and now SG Anon. SG Anon may be actually a faction of the White Hats, because he says things that I have huge objections to. I don't know if it's because he puts things differently, and you can argue with the way he puts something. Like, one of the things he recently said was, we're propping Biden up, and I'm paraphrasing, we're propping Biden up, we put him in place. Now, you can't say that you put Biden in place, okay? Because we had a stolen election that put Biden in place. And the White Hats didn't steal the election from themselves. Okay, that's just stupid. But they allowed the election steal to happen. That's not the same thing as creating it, okay? Creating the steal or orchestrating the steal, so to speak. What they're doing, in theory, they've even said this, is they're allowing the dark side to destroy itself.
Expose itself, yeah.
And even at times maybe helping it. So in the case of Biden is sitting there, let's say he's kind of like dual controllers. One would be the dark hats, one would be the white hats.
Yeah.
Which is Trump, Trump. And it's very tight-knit. The White Hats are a very tight-knit group, even though they're international. And there are layers of, so you could be in the White Hat organization and, be quite far from the center of things, right? And there are some sub people like Gene Decode, Simon Parks, Charlie Ward. There's been a few people who have kind of, how do you put this? Let's just say loosely made deals with or been orchestrated by the White Hats to come out with information, leaks, whatever you want to say, occasionally claiming to know more than they really know.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're proven absolutely wrong in a very short span of time. But I think that's orchestrated by the White Hats actually giving them false information on purpose because they want to mislead the enemy. So it's kind of not their fault, if you will,
Makes sense.
So, I know more than I can say, actually, believe it or not. I say a lot. But you know what I'm saying? So yes. I'm trying to be a little bit careful here. I can say that in essence, my big issue at the moment is the White Hats say they want to wake people up, but they're not telling them the truth. And they're not telling the people that need waking up the real truth. Right. Okay. At all. They're not making a dent in those people, as far as I'm concerned.
It's just becoming a bigger split. That's the problem, right? It's a bigger split than anything.
And, the Twitter move was a good one. They took over Twitter. Ostensibly, I think, they made a deal with Elon because Elon was not totally a good guy by any stretch. He was actually working with the deep state, pretty embedded in the deep state. But somehow they got, him to come over to their side. But Elon is a cyborg at this point. So, but whatever. He wants to build cyborgs and he is a cyborg. So he's not completely human. But that aside, so Twitter, they took over through Elon. And Elon apparently got the money from some fairly nefarious source. I don't know. I don't think it was Chinese, but it was somewhere people have been saying lately. But at any rate, all I'm saying is now they do the Twitter releases showing you the relationship between the media, the Twitter media, and the FBI. But I think Kash Patel had a really good point very recently on Nino's show when he said that, however, if they were really disclosing information via Twitter, they would have put out the contracts between Twitter and the FBI, because there are contracts, apparently. And Twitter has been paid money by the FBI. In other words, to control people. And I was banned from Twitter 2 or 3 years ago during this time. I was banned right around the time when Trump was banned, which I guess is a kind of badge of honor. Since then, it took me like a year or two to create another Twitter. So I have another Twitter. They've never given me back my original Twitter. And I've tried to get it. I can say there are, people using my logo, using my Project Camelot name, pretending to be me on Twitter. So there are several of those channels. I'm under KL Cassidy. My Twitter is on my website if you want to find it, the actual Twitter that I've been using for the last year, I think it is. Anyway, I think I digress. So, do you see the playing field a little bit here? And the fact that, okay, if Trump, there are many aspects to this, many ways and avenues that information can be shared with even the general public, not just the loyal followers, right? Who are already who are already awake. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That Trump could use, for example, because he's often, if he does something outrageous, they're gonna take notice. Okay. So like if you had a press conference at Mar-a-Lago, and by the way, invited a lot of alternative journalists, that would make news, and because the mainstream journalists would get all jealous and they would try to embed themselves there. If they didn't, they would still get the story by default. So you see how there are tactics. And I see, this is my interest. My interest is in raising consciousness and making sure that the white hats kind of do what they say they're going to do, stay honest to the people from that point of view. And I'm also concerned on a spiritual level with their souls, because if you are doing exactly the same thing as the dark side in your methods to take down the dark side, do you see how that works?
Yeah.
In essence, what's the difference between you and the dark side? You have to and if you're executing, you're giving secret trials. Look, we have secret trials, secret surveillance, secret this, secret that. In the end, how do they differ from, the KGB or the Nazi, or the Nazi, I'm saying, even though they're trying to do this for a good reason. Okay. But you cannot necessarily, as time goes on, separate your tactics and I'm talking about karma would be the wrong word, but your soul debt, let's say, by virtue of that, as opposed to in the state of, yes, we're in war and all this kind of thing. And also being honest with the people, dealing with the people directly and saying, and so this sort of show has been going on now for over 2 years since Biden was sworn in, certainly in earnest, but even before that. And now we have actually 3 stolen elections. So we have 2020, we have the primaries, and we have 2022. How many more stolen elections do they have to preside over, so to speak, get the blockchain evidence for, which they definitely have done and even has said they did? And Robert Davis Steele, before he died, said they have it all, and that was in 2020, and never bring it forward. And I don't mean to the Supreme Court, because the courts are infiltrated and most of them are not listening and not taking cases even. They just throw the cases out constantly having to do with the election steal. So you're obviously, you can go direct to the people. You can bring your evidence direct to the people. And they can. Okay. Yes, a lot of the mainstream media, are taken over, but there are plenty of sort of sub-mainstream vehicles that you can use. there's C-SPAN, there's all kinds of things, but they're not using them. They say they want to wake people up, but they're not reaching the people. They're reaching only the people that are already woken up.
Right.
So
right.
can I ask the question then, even talking with 107 as much as you have, do you ask him that kind of question? Like, what are you guys waiting for? Like, what's taking so long? Like, this needs to come out.
You see what I'm doing here on the show? I have been doing this now for a while. In other words, I send him all my interviews that I do. I send him all, and I rant to him. And, the only way I can talk to him is, and I don't know why I'm not banned. Maybe I'm banned in some secretive way, but as far as I know, my messages still go through on his texting his phone. And this is ever since I met him. So I don't know, but he did tell me that, he has several phones and he gets over 300 text messages a day, I guess, on each phone. And so you do the numbers. I don't even know how a human can cope with that, but whatever. And then not long ago, he told me he had a committee looking over those messages. So for all I know, he doesn't even see my messages, except that every once in a while, he'll do something that leads me to believe he has seen my message. Okay. Like he'll incorporate something I say in his talks. But I've been ranting at him for literally for years. So
Yeah.
you've got no idea.
Man, I don't know. But that's such a huge bomb to drop, and how David was really just blown away by the fact that he could possibly be, or one of his doubles as JFK Jr. is actually him. And
David, you mean David Rodriguez? Nino
Yeah.
Rodriguez?
Yeah, how you were talking about with him, and he was just
Nino is not blown away by that.
But what's that?
Nino is not blown away by that.
Oh, he just seemed like it every time you talk to him on the show.
I know, but that's all I can say about that. Nino is very close to 107.
Okay. Well, then that's good. If it's hard for a lot of people to believe, but they need to see there's the technology out there that can do this. So, in many ways, and like you mentioned, the Mission Impossible.
Well, the disguise. I mean, at this point, the disguise 107 is wearing in public, like the most recent. Well, he did more than one public showing in the last, few months, but I saw him in person I think it was the end of August. I'm not sure what part of August, but I think it was the end. Maybe it was even September, at what was called the Renegade Fest. I think it was the Renegade. No. It starts with an R, whatever, festival in Texas. Okay.
Right.
So I was there with him and had another intense, very short discussion, but fairly intense with him at that point. And he's wearing the most ridiculous. He looks like Santa Claus. He was wearing a big long beard. He's wearing this really fat stomach now. And then of course he has a cowboy hat covering, half his face, so he really, but he makes a disguise. So, it's a disguise. There's no way that's the way he looks. Okay. Just saying. And I think people know that. I think he does it on purpose. So, because in a certain sense, and I've written about this and I have a couple key posts that I made with photographs, etc. That he is coming out slowly but surely because he wants people to know who he is, which is understandable. Sure. This is a guy who, the whole white hat movement is based around the death of John F. Kennedy, his father.
Right.
So you have to understand, if he is who I say he is highly involved with the white hats. Right. And there's evidence of his military training out there. I mean, if you want to do the research, the evidence is out there. Okay. Tremendous amount of information. And really, okay. Well, I don't want to get into this whole thing because I have a lot of the evidence is on my website of who he is. There are plenty of people who think I'm crazy, and even people that still write to me, even though all I can tell you is I have proof. enough
Right.
proof for me as an investigative journalist to say this is the guy. I have also met the other 107 who has blue eyes and who has completely different personality and so on and so forth.
Okay. Okay. No, that's good enough. That makes me think that maybe it's still not safe enough for him to come out in public, and that's one of the reasons why. But
Right.
that could be a big part of it.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
And it's going back to what is going to be the thing that's going to wake up that other 50% or over 50% that still don't get it. And you would think the vaccination and the COVID would be a big part of that. And maybe that, I would hope that would be it, or just trying to get out the fact that JFK was killed by its own government, and that's supposed to be released and still hasn't been released. And so what is that spark that it's going to take? And I don't know. Yeah. If 106.
Well, I mean, more and more stuff, it's like a drip feed, people say, of information that if people in the mainstream who believe the mainstream wanted to access it, it's like the truth is out there. Okay, it is. But I can tell you that even my own sisters don't know jack about that, and probably don't want to know jack about that, and barely know what I do for a living. And it's and people I meet on the street, I mean, most people that I encounter, even just stories from people, they're just in the dark. They didn't pick it up. It didn't come on the media that they watch and listen to. Do you know what I mean? And
Right.
They consider it. I mean, the CIA did a really good job in branding us conspiracy theorists, even though to me that's a compliment, but it's conspiracy fact as opposed to theory, but whatever.
Right.
In other words, everything is a conspiracy as far as I'm concerned. But
Sure.
I'm an investigative journalist. That's what I do. I investigate conspiracies. I don't do anything but that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only way we're living in this world right now is through a conspiracy that got us to this point in the first place.
And what is a conspiracy? It's a small group of people plotting, nefarious deeds against the larger whole.
Mhm.
And that has been going on in our government and in our country and in the countries around the world forever.
Right.
Ever. This is not new. This has always been happening, and go watch a Godfather movie if you don't believe it.
Yeah. And I think that was even talked about that. That was one of the reasons for the third Godfather, was because they actually killed the Pope, and they were disclosing that information of what was going on there. I'm going to add one more thing to this layer of topic, and it might not sound related, but I think it is. It's this whole fake alien invasion topic, and what's it going to take to get people to see what's going on? Well, and like you said, and I think Mark Richards' interview you did, it was Randy Kramer who said they might actually use that. The White Hats might even want to use that to their benefit.
Actually, he didn't say he said they would use it. He said in the next 3 years, and this was, I have to say, it's now over 3 years. So I guess they held off on it. But he and I were speaking at a conference together. He went on stage. He's a Marine. He had his Marine, handlers there, watching him. And he delivered this information to the audience. He said, within 3 years, the military has decided they need to wake the people up, and they're going to do a fake alien invasion. Why is it going to be fake? Because they need to control the narrative and show that they're the winners, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and that a lot of it would be televised. It wouldn't be, so that collateral damage could be limited. He said about 1 million people will die. Now, and then, I was in the audience, and I was saying certain things to him, and he stomped off the stage and came directly right in front of me. And this is a heavy duty Marine, right?
Wow.
I mean, I thought, okay, he's going to kill me. No, but and this was all filmed, and basically, kind of told me off for basically saying, how do you have a fake alien invasion when you've got real aliens here? They're not going to just sit by and watch. And I also said, okay, who's going to be their fake alien? What are they going to use? They're probably going to use these insectoid bug things that are part of the Halo series and, Ready Player Go or whatever that's called. In other words, these various series that especially kids play games like these games where they're actually trained to go kill these bugs, right?
Right.
And they've written a number of books about it and, all this kind of thing. So that's in theory the version of Alien they'll probably use or something like it. Now, there are more rumblings, by the way. This is kind of interesting right now, believe it or not, about this alien sort of, if you want to call it fake alien. See, I don't call it fake. I just call it fake real alien invasion because we are invaded. They're here. There are all kinds of those beings here. And maybe one of those groups will help them, with this fake, so-called fake side of it. But in essence, and I ran this idea by Mark Richards. He actually thought it was a good idea because from the military point of view, what is going to wake up the people to the reality that we have, aliens here, that we're, all these things is like, how do you convey to them? I mean, the Illuminati have been telling people the truth through movies and television forever. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can name, X-Men series, this series, that series, Invasion, all the invasion movies and, Independence Day. And it's all been out there in one form or fashion. Sometimes it's laughable, sometimes it's close to the truth, even when it's laughable, then you realize. So, so basically, what can I say? The fake alien agenda, blue beam, they called it blue beam, it's holograms that will, John Lear testified that he went to see a speaker in a special event. The speaker talked to everybody. I think he even walked up and down the aisle. Everyone thought he was real, and it was a hologram. So holograms are, at this point, very sophisticated and can look incredibly real. And by the way, 9/11 holograms.
Definitely.
So this is what we're talking about. So yes, I think it's still on the books. In fact, I have some recent information where I have been contacted about an alien, a find where there's reptilian skulls, crystal beautiful reptilian skulls, and the whole find is controlled by gray ETs apparently walking around on the surface. This is the story I'm getting. UFOs, they've got UFOs. One of the things going on in South and Central America and also Mexico is that there was a deal made with the gray ETs who are abducting humans in the United States to actually get them to go abduct humans south of the border and more or less try to leave more of us alone. It didn't really work because they're still, they're incredibly nefarious and they're everywhere. But that is one thing that does mean that they had sort of free reign with less interference in their activities. So you're getting a lot of even the race, push against our border. A lot of those are minions that are more or less mind controlled by the gray ETs and to come into our country. And
that's a lot.
Scenario.
It's always a lot for people to handle, but I just remember you talking about that, and I've made a note about that. It's like, wow, that's a whole other border issue we're talking about. But,
right. There are many facets to these stories, many.
And the fact that the raptors are on the good side helping us, these good, sort more or less reptilians that are fighting against the Drake.
Absolutely. And according to Mark Richards, sometimes they even really appear like as actors in the movies, like Jurassic World and this recent Jurassic World that's called, what is it called? Dominion, I think.
Yeah, the recent one. Yeah.
So, you're not always looking like at a fake raptor, apparently.
Wow.
I find that hard to believe, but I don't know, you know. He said
Right.
they're living in castles and big houses here in I'm in England at the moment for the holidays. Here in England.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
you know, reptilians have a way to wipe your mind and to get you to actually not see them when they're there.
Right. Right. I mean, that's how it's been happening for so long. I think this
Right.
shifting part of it too. Yeah. That's there's so much more we can talk about. Is there anything that you want to discuss that coming in 2023 and things that you see on the lookout for?
Not that I can think of, you know, I think I've covered a huge gamut here. I don't, you know, and it's easier if I have a direct question, just because there's such a big playing field. But I do think one of the things that I do, maybe I'd like to say to your audience, is I keep an open mind. So the trouble that I find out there is a lot of people, they want solid, you know, solidity. They want material reality to be as more material than it really is. And even scientists will tell you that a table that looks solid is actually, you know, particles, atoms, whatever, in constant motion. And if you match your frequency to a wall or whatever, you can actually go through it. Men Who Stare at Goats is a movie and a book that tried to talk about the CIA trying to do that. Just simply that we are not so material as we think we are, that material reality is also, you know, just an aspect. It's kind of an illusion in a certain way. And, you know, that we are time travelers by nature, you know, and that time and space actually are one anyway. The Native Americans understand this intuitively. So I just think there's nothing outside the realm of possibility that can be conceived in the human mind that couldn't happen, so-called happen in what we call reality. It's, you know, it's the limitations of people that they put on themselves that make it hard for them to understand the true nature of reality.
I think that's such a great point. That's such a great point. And I'll just add to like my personal experience. I've had three major things that happened, and I just briefly talked about them in passing. But one was I did see a giant lizard that you could call it a reptilian, but I saw it in New Mexico outside of my grandfather's house with a friend of mine when we were like 14, 15. So that was very real to me, but can I prove that happened to anybody else? Not really. I also had a Ouija board experience where I did speak to someone who claimed to be JFK, and I have the whole transcription of what we talked about. It was like 10 to 12 questions or whatever, but how do I prove that? Unless you were there with me and seeing it for yourself, you're not going to say that happened. But nevertheless, I would never defame that family or that person by saying this happened and it didn't. It's just the experience I experienced. And then you happen to have, I know you mentioned your Kundalini experience, and I did have something similar. I felt like this activation, and it was intense, very intense. But those are things like and it's almost like you have to open up yourself to the questioning and the mindset of that to then get those answers and receive that input back, right? It's one and the same as far as it's a two-way street as far as opening your mind up to that and getting the evidence you want. Yeah.
For sure.
Important. So anyway, but there's so many things we could talk about and on your personal experiences too. And maybe for another time, I know you've gone into Radu Sinamar and the Transylvania Sunrise and all that whole topic. And I think that's very important.
Great.
I just bought all the books, so I have to catch up and read.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
So I think that's really prevalent and relevant to what's happening, what could be happening in the future too.
Sure.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe. Love to talk to you about that at some other point. So, yeah. But no, I'm so glad you were able to join us. I know it's been a long interview, so I know you're on vacation or enjoying the holidays. So, thank you.
I'm trying to be. I keep getting pulled back into work, but I'm trying to be on vacation.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, no, thank you again for coming and joining us on this. And we'll,
Okay.
yeah, we'll definitely,
Certainly.
yeah, again.
And we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a great
Okay.
conversation.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Take care.